Hey, what is going on, everyone? It's me, Mr. Mario, and welcome back to another episode of Mario's Minute. For those who do not know, Mario's Minute is the second podcast I do. My main podcast is called Matcha, in which I talk about things that I find new, interesting, fun, cool, maybe a little bit funny, and maybe do a little bit of show and tell in the world of video game modding and video game console modding. However, this is not that. This here, like I said, is my second podcast, Mario's Minute, in which I come on here once a month and I talk to you all about really whatever the hell I want to. Sometimes I have a guest on, sometimes I don't. We've been flying solo for a little bit here, and we are going to be doing that yet again for this episode for July 2026. Now, since this is a podcast here, there's a couple ways you can consume this. The first way is through the Mr. Mario 2011 YouTube, Rumble, and Odyssey channels, which is where most people check out the video visual version of it. There's not too much going on there, although it's mostly for the communication and conversation that happens in the comments section, but you can go over there. You can really just see the video of my channel art with a cool looking, at least I think it's a cool looking visualizer. Aside from that, it's also available in an audio only form like an actual podcast. Simply look up Mario's Minute on your favorite podcasting app, host, provider, or platform, and you should hopefully be able to find it. I know it's not available on all of them, but it is available on most of them. Either way, like I said, this here is my podcast in which I come on here and I talk to you all a little bit about really whatever the hell I want to. And, I didn't think that I was still going to be talking about this exact topic a month later, but that's just how it's going, man. I have a few other things I'm going to talk about here, but, I didn't think that Sony was just going to piss off the entire internet and a part of the world as they did. But before we get into that, I do want to tell this story. This was a story of something that ended up happening in my day-to-day. This actually ended up happening, was it yesterday? I believe it was yesterday, yes. And sometimes I like to tell stories like this just because I kind of want to share experiences like this that happen, just to kind of let some people know. It's like, not only some people could maybe relate to this, maybe sharing the frustration, but maybe to other people who might not know that this shouldn't be a normal thing. Stuff like this shouldn't be normalized, or maybe even a little bit horrified that something like this is starting to happen, or it's becoming a little more normal. I guess what the pre-context of this is that a part of what I do on the channel, yes, I do the the easier to follow tutorials, and I break things down and give that detail and all that stuff. But especially with the advent and the rising of AI and all that, and look, I mean, most people use AI. I'm an AI user as well too, but I've really told people use it as a tool and make sure you don't lose your brain to it. And I think a lot of that, it was even before the AI, but, just kind of the problem-solving skills, the critical thinking, all of that. That stuff I still want to promote. I still want people to have. And I guess I ended up saying even, too, I know this is a little bit of a longer intro for this topic, but I was even talking with someone recently about it, and I was saying, like, this is why I feel like a lot of stuff that I do on the channel, I'm happy with how I do it, but I refuse to dumb it down further. And I'm not being insulting. I'm not saying people who watch it are dumb or anything. It is not like that at all, because I like to cover things that can be scary or complicated or whatever it is, and make it to the point where the average person can use it. But I've kind of feared of what has happened with a lot of the average person. You also, you see a lot of people too. I've seen at least where there's just people who, they really just want things summarized. That's it. And I'm like, no, you all know I do my long videos. I get detailed. I get yappy about it. I'm proud of that aspect. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to be YouTube shorting this entire channel. We're not doing that. That's not what this is for. If you want your quick stuff very quickly, you want your dopamine hits, you need to go to another channel. I'm sorry. But I think it comes to in real life moments like this. And this is what I'm getting to. So this was yesterday. I was going around, I was walking my dogs, just, standard typical day, nothing bad going on there. And suddenly somebody ends up pulling up on me. It wasn't anything bad, but I was a little bit startled. They were in a car and they were taking a turn, and they rolled their windows down. They're like, hey, excuse me, sir, excuse me. And at first I thought, usually when I'm getting flagged down, my first thought is like, oh goodness, what did I do? Okay, well, what did I do? What did I mess up? But no, it was actually a person who was asking for help. And I described this to some of my friends, and one of them asked how old this person was. And I will say, I'm bad at guessing ages, right? But the way I described it, I feel like people who don't get it will kind of have an understanding, and people who do get it will be like, "Oh God, yeah, okay, that describes it accurately." Like that, just I guess the age group, the demographic, whatever it might be. The young man who was asking me was a person who he was certainly old enough to drive a car on his own, but he was young enough that it was a older car and it had a aftermarket single din stereo in it, and it made sense to install one of those in there. And it was also old enough and basic enough, I guess, that it didn't even have like a USB port in there. So that's what I'm going to be saying the age demographic of this driver was. But he ends up pulling up to me and he asked me for help. And he said, "Hey, so I'm looking for a friend's house right now. I think it's on this street, but the problem is my phone just died." And I was like, "Oh, okay, well, I'm sorry to hear about that." Now, I was walking around, I had my phone in my hand, and the first thing I thought of was, okay, I can just GPS this guy over to where he needs to go. So I ask him, I'm like, "Okay, hey, so do you have your friend's address?" "No." "Okay. Do you have the number to his like the house number or anything or like any of that?" "No." "Okay. Um could you tell me like anything about the house, any details?" "No." "Do you know what car your friend drives? Maybe I might be familiar with it." And he told me the type of car it was, like the make, the model, and the color. And I said, "Well, I've been around here a while, and I mean, I walk around, and I haven't seen a car like that parked around here. Maybe your friend parked it. I'm not sure. Or not parked it. Maybe he garaged it. I don't know. But yeah, I'm sorry, man. I don't know how else I can help." And he was like, "Okay, well, thank you." And then he drove off. So I start walking, and he pulls up on me again. He pretty much he goes, he makes a little bit of a loop, he comes back. And then he asks me, "Excuse me, so I'm still, I'm trying to look for my friend's place, but do you know like how to get to this area?" And the thing that he described to me, it was an area that wasn't even really like it was close to where I'm at, but where I'm at is physically very different than where he was describing. So I said, "Oh, no, so you just need to go here and you take this direction and then you go here and go here and go here and then it's going to be really obvious this is where you're going to turn off." And he's like, "Oh, okay." And then and at one point the thing that still kind of like it dumbfounds me with this is that he told me that he was at his friend's place last night. Now, do I expect him to remember all the details of how to get there? No, because I certainly don't remember all those details. But it just kind of alarmed me because I'm like, these are two very, you think that your friend's place is in my neighborhood, but then you're describing how to get to another neighborhood, and these are two completely separate neighborhoods. Like, I can show you pictures of the two of them, and you'd be like, yeah, they're radically different. Like, if he was there last night, you would think that he was like, you would think if he was in the wrong neighborhood, he would have been immediately able to recognize that he was in the wrong neighborhood. Anyways, I couldn't really, I wanted to help the guy, but with very little information on hand, I really couldn't do that. And that was the disappointing thing about it too. But then after he drove off, I was kind of just at a point, I was like, I think this is a generational gap in problem solving and knowledge right here. And I ran it by some friends and they were just dumbfounded by like, okay, maybe like, they told me, they're like, "Dude, there was no way you were going to be able to help that guy. Like if you described it like that, like if that's how it went down, there was no way you were going to be able to help him." One of my friends, he ended up giving a pretty, I feel like a pretty good response to it. And he said that maybe it was the type of thing where the guy was just, he was panicking a little bit and he asked me for help, but he asked me for help before he realized what he actually needed help with. So it just didn't come off like that. But the thing that concerns me is not only stuff like that I do see much more often, where people kind of need to be told what to do, prompted. They need, they can do this stuff if you break it down to the minutia of it all, and even then there might still be struggles, but there's no recollection, there's no problem solving, there's no critical thinking, there's no context clues that are going on there. And it's scary when I see that, especially when I see it offline, especially when I see it happening in the day to day. What I was thinking when I came off that, I was like, unless I had a portable battery on hand, how was I supposed to help out the guy? And then I put myself into his position, into his shoes, because some people might be thinking, okay, dude, Mario, the guy is young. If you were in his position, even if you were his age, what would you have done? And I was thinking, okay, like even back then, because when I was this guy's age, presumed age here, smartphones did exist. GPS devices did exist. I had, the same type of old car, like, like third party stereo system and everything in there. Might or might not have had a USB port available. So what I would do now, but even what I would have done back then, is, well, first of all, step zero, I would have made sure to have a charger on me. Maybe not a portable battery, but at least a charger. But if I didn't have a charger, if Captain Hindsight wasn't available there, what I would have done is I would have driven around a little bit and I would have looked for a gas station, maybe a grocery store, a coffee shop, even if there was some kind of shop of some kind, like if there was a Walmart or a Target or whatever. And I'm not saying you have to drive 20 minutes. I'm saying just kind of drive like 5 minutes around, see something. Even when I was on the way to this neighborhood, I could have recounted and been like, okay, what shops did I see along the way? What could I have done? Worst case scenario, I could have even gone to like a restaurant or something. So I would have pulled into one of those places and just been like, hey, excuse me. Well, first of all, if I could buy a charger, if there was a charger that was affordable enough, I would just see if I could just buy a charger in one of those stores. Like if I could drop into a Walmart, just grab a charger real quick, something like that. But if I didn't want to spend money, or even if that wasn't available, I would have talked to an employee and been like, hey, excuse me, I'm really sorry about this, but I'm looking for a friend's place. They gave me their address. It's in my phone. My phone ended up dying on the way here. Do you have a USB-C charger? Do you have a lightning charger? Just whatever phone I'm using. Do you have one of those chargers, and could I please borrow it for like 10 or 15 minutes? Like I'll even stay up here at the counter. I just need enough juice here. I need to see the address. I just need to GPS it. And if you give me no more than 15 minutes, I'll be out of your hair. That's what I would do. And then from there, I would use enough juice to boot up my phone to see the address. I'd pull it up, drop it into Google Maps, and then see where I'm going. And then hopefully get enough juice there where it's like, hey, I can get this all the way over to this person's house. But even worst case scenario, if I can just see, okay, I just need to go up this road, then here, then here, then here, that should jog my memory enough where I can then go and do that. So I don't think that's too difficult there. But the problem is I'm seeing less of that. I don't know if anybody else has seen less of that. I don't know if maybe you're listening to this and you're realizing that maybe you've seen less of that. But man, it's a problem. It's a problem. I'll just share that little thing that I had. So now going back to the big thing, this whole Sony disc debacle, right? And for anybody who's out of the loop here, because I end up talking about this a little bit, actually not even this directly, the last episode of Mario's Minute, I was talking about, and let me even, bring up exactly what was going on there. Here we go. I'll be honest, I have to look these up sometimes because like some of them are really starting to blend together, and it's not because I want to keep harping on the same topic, it's because the same topic keeps happening so often, and it's something that I'm passionate about, which is essentially you will own nothing and like it. And the last episode I was talking about cloud versions of games disappearing, and I was talking about the complete lack of ownership because these were versions of games for mainly the ones I was talking about was Kingdom Hearts, where if you purchase the cloud versions of them on the Switch, at this point now you have less than a year to utilize them. And then they just disappear. That's it. The servers are going to go offline for them. Any money you spent on them, which you had to spend money to actually access them, you'll no longer be able to access those versions. And you have less than a year now to transfer your saves over to the native Switch 2 versions of the games that are going to be coming out, if not already out. But on top of that, if you have the cloud versions, you don't get the native builds for free. They were nice enough to give a coupon for, I think it's like half off, something like that. But yeah, they don't even give them to you for free in that regard. So I was talking about it there, and it's funny because before, or I guess around the time this was announced, I ended up making a video about this with Sony ending PlayStation disc production, and there was one person in the comments, and I don't have your name, I apologize, but shout out to them because they said something like, wow, this is really scary because literally the last upload you did, Mario's Minute, you were saying that people aren't going to wake up to this unless something big happens. And then immediately after you uploaded, something big ended up happening. Now, I already made a about 1 hour video talking about this. I even said in there, hey, this is typically a Mario's Minute thing, but I'm doing a separate video about it. And I gave my thoughts and I talked about it. So I'm not going to restate this stuff in there. However, what I am surprised with is that it's a month out now and I'm still talking about it and it's still relevant and people are still bringing this up, talking about it, giving Sony grief, and to that, I applaud you all. Like, I didn't think we would be talking about this a month later. I really didn't. And it's so much, it's one of those stories, right? And this happened a few times in my life. It's something like, it's about a niche or a hobby or something that I'm really passionate about. And it ends up, I guess the term is breaking containment. It ends up breaking containment. It's something that it's big, it could be funny, it could be good, it could be bad, whatever it is, but it's something that is big within the fandom or within the hobby or the interest that I have. And I can share a couple of examples of this. One of them was, man, I got to use my words carefully when talking about this. One of them was when the Aqua Teen Hunger Force film was coming out. Just look up Aqua Teen Hunger Force Boston. I'll say that. I'm trying to be appropriate with what I'm saying here. But in short, in order to promote the film, they ended up doing something that scared the entire city of Boston, and they had to put Boston on lockdown. And suddenly, I had several people who were asking me, hey, and I'm talking about, I was in middle school at the time, but I'm talking about adults. They're like, hey, you know that show that you watch, like that one weird show with like the food? What's going on in Boston with it? Like there's something happening in Boston, or what? There was like something going on there. What happened there? That was probably the first time I remember like something like that I really loved and enjoyed a lot ended up breaking containment like that. Another one, funny enough, was when Soulja Boy ended up doing his Soulja game consoles, these systems that he was drop shipping that were just full of pirated games, like the little emulator boxes and emulator consoles and stuff, like the crappy AliExpress ones that you would find. It was funny because it's like I don't keep up with it as much as I used to, but like I was a lot more like when I was following rappers closer and all that stuff, I was, more into like the releases, culture, just like the funny things like that were going on. And Soulja Boy is always doing some stupid stuff, right? He's always he's doing a million things, but he's always doing at least one or two things that just seem like stupid. And so it was a thing of like people who knew about Soulja Boy, people who still followed him, people who, had a passing interest, whether they were really a legitimate fan of his music or they just thought it was kind of funny. They ended up, he still popped up on our radars from time to time. And this is one of those things where he ended up drop shipping these bootleg consoles out. And I remember when the news dropped of this, I was just kind of like, oh, okay, yeah, that's Soulja Boy doing something stupid. And then it broke containment in a really big way. And I was like, oh, wait a minute. Most of the world forgot about him after Crank That. He dropped Crank That. He had one or two singles after that. And then most of the world forgot about him. So like for me, as someone who kind of somewhat regularly sees his name, this is just another, stupid thing he's doing. But to the rest of the world, they haven't heard about this guy since like 2008, and all of a sudden he comes back and he's selling these bootleg game consoles. Okay, I get it now. I get the perspective. And I share that because that's pretty much what happened with the PlayStation disc debacle. Now, I knew it was going to upset people. I knew that people were also going to make fun of others for being upset, which I'll say a lot of that has really just been, okay, it's time to move on, discs are outdated, or people are kind of just poking and being all like, oh yeah, no, I'm so, you know what, people just need to deal with it, we need to move on, right? I'm so glad that we're finally getting rid of these outdated discs just to spite you all. Like, it's been a lot of that, but it's not really people who are giving good, constructive, valid reasons for these discs disappearing. Now, what I'm saying here is that I expected people to be upset. But what I didn't expect was for seemingly the entire internet to be pissed off at PlayStation about this. On top of that, I didn't expect it to break containment nearly as big as it did. It went into, like, I was talking about this a bit, and there were some people that, always naysayers, but there was some naysayers who were trying to be like, no, it's just your algorithm. And I'm like, dude, no, this is not an algorithm thing. First of all, there was news articles about it, not just gaming news, standard news, mainstream news, local news outlets were talking about this. On top of that, I had gone out, and when I would go out and I would go to even non-nerd related places, people would be talking about this. If someone brought up PlayStation, people would be like, "Oh, wait, they're not making discs anymore, right?" Like it became mainstream news. Mainstream people who didn't really care, who were removed from gaming, who didn't really talk about this, were talking about it. That's what threw me off so much. The biggest example I have of this, and granted, this is, I guess, nerd adjacent here, but shortly after this happened, my girlfriend and I ended up going to a flea market. And there was a seller there. He was selling several CDs, movies, music, games as well, too. So I picked up a few games from him. But you could also tell he was an older guy, and he kind of followed the gaming stuff, but you could tell he was more just kind of in it for, he was just, trying to buy low and sell high. That's what he was interested in. And it was just something he was doing with his free time. So I was, looking at the PlayStation games, and he said something. He's just trying to make conversation with me, and he was like, yeah, I heard that Sony, they're not making those PlayStation discs anymore. I don't really know how bad it is, but I mean, it sounds bad. I'm not really sure what's up, but it sounds bad. And so I was able to explain to him very, very quickly with this. I was like, okay, this is how I'm going to explain it to you. Right now, you can get your disc at any place. Like, I'm buying discs from you. You can get them from a different shop. You can get them from different people. You can buy them. You can sell them. You can trade them. You can do whatever you want to. When Sony ends up doing this, they are going to be the only entity that can sell you PlayStation games. You will not be able to resell them. They will be able to decide when you can play them, how you can play them, how much you need to pay in order to play them, and at any point in time, they can revoke your ability to play something that you paid for. And the guy, like, his face just dropped. And he's like, oh. And I said, yeah, that's why it's bad. So thankfully he was able to connect the dots there. But that's why there's, like, for people who are saying this stuff, like, who are saying, and I think it's just a lot of internet garbage, honestly, but for people who are trying to be in support of killing the disc there, I really don't believe that's the mainstream belief of it. For even people who aren't crazy into physical media. Like my brothers, for example, they're not into physical media as much as I am, but even they have games that they will purchase digitally on these platforms. They also have times where they will ask for physical copies of games, or they will purchase a physical copy of a game. And even then, they were sad about it. People are sad from the lack of a choice that is being forcefully taken away from that. And by the way, on all that, I wanted to say too, just because I've said a lot already about this, but I kind of want to just add on for some more things I haven't really talked as much about. That whole part about the access right there, where I said, Sony can control, when you can access a game, how you can access a game, how much you're going to pay for it. They can even take it away. That's not me being hyperbolic. I promise you that. That has happened several times over. One of the best examples, which I did not include in the previous episode, I did not include in my video. But this is technically not, it is a game, but it isn't a game. It is PT, otherwise known as Playable Teaser, otherwise known as Silent Hills, otherwise known as a Silent Hills demo. If you haven't heard of it, if you haven't looked into it, it is a legendary demo that dropped. The story was that it just dropped. There was this game, it dropped for free on the PlayStation Store called PT. It came from this completely unknown, I'm getting goosebumps talking about this. It came from this unknown developer, unknown publisher, and I promise you, like, when I found out about it, it was like a creepypasta. The way I found out about it was one of my best friends ended up calling me. And he was like, I think Gamescom or something was going on, but he asked me if I kept up with that, and I said no. And he's like, okay, dude, there's this game that dropped. Like, you need to check it out. It's on PS4. It's called PT. Have you heard of it? And I said no. And he's like, dude, it's this game, and it's like, it's a horror game, but it's not like a horror game. It's like a puzzle game, and it's not like a puzzle game, and and nobody knows where it came from. It came from this company. Nobody's heard of the company. And like the graphics they look so good. Like they look so realistic, but just like, but it's hard to describe. It's incredible. And I can't even really like describe the game to you. Like, you just need to play it. Cause like we're in the middle, we're trying to play through it right now. We're in the middle of it and we don't even know how far we're into it, but like nobody knows about this game and everyone's trying to figure it out. And that conversation I had within the first like 24 hours of it being released, because within 48 to 72 hours, people were able to finish up the game and they found out, spoiler alert, even though it's been so many years now, they found out that when you beat the demo, it was actually the demo for Silent Hills, which was going to be Hideo Kojima's take on the Silent Hill franchise. But then it ended up getting canceled because of all the stuff that happened between him and Konami. So unfortunately, that was a sad thing. Now, what happened was once it was canceled, Konami not only delisted PT, but they did something that was a little bit unprecedented as well. Something that I mentioned in my video, and something I've talked about several times, was I said that yes, theoretically, if you have an account on any of these networks, PlayStation Network, for example, and you've downloaded something, you are entitled to that download. If you've purchased content, you are entitled to that content. And even if they delist it, meaning that once it's been delisted, nobody can purchase it. But if you have already purchased it, and even if you delete it, and even if you get rid of your system, theoretically, the way it should work is that you can go out and buy a new system, set up your account on there, go into your download history, and re-download that content. You paid for it, it is entitled to your account, and you're able to re-download it and play it on there. You cannot do that with PT. They killed PT so far to the point that you could not even re-download it. Like, I remember this. If you go to the actual game listing on your PS4 and you try to hit download or re-download, it's frosted out. It's not clickable. It's not pressable. You cannot re-download it. Now, I have also, because you all already know, I do the modding thing on here, but this isn't even really fully modding related. I ended up doing a thing where you could actually use a proxy server. And it's not hacking up the system, but essentially what you can do is you can host a proxy server on a computer, and then you can route your PlayStation 4's traffic through your computer, and through that you can actually, and you can't just get the game for free. You have to have an account that already has the game added to it. But you can go there and you can actually re-download the game itself using your account that had it entitled to it onto your stock PS4. I've been able to do it multiple times, and it still works in 2026. The problem is it's not going to be usable for most people because it requires you to have an account that has PT added to it. So let's just be real, most people are going to jailbreak their PS4 or PS5 and then get a copy of it and install it. Which at that point, it's like, look, I'm not even shaming anyone for it. It's one of the greatest things ever created in gaming, and there's no possible way to get it. Even as a legitimate person, if you have it legitimate, like I described like that, you have to jump through even more hurdles. If you're not willing to set up a proxy server on your network, you cannot re-download that game. They have completely removed access to it. And it was made even worse. I'm going to tell you all a story from about 6 years ago. And I feel like a lot of people have forgotten about this. On the PS5 has backwards compatibility with PS4 games. Now, initially when the PS5 ended up dropping with this, I believe there was 10 PlayStation 4 games that did not work on the PS5. And I believe at this point that number has dropped to either 4 or 6. It's one of the two. So there's 4 or 6 PS4 games that just do not work on the PlayStation 5. Not as bad of a number, but still there's just a few games that should work on the PS5 and they don't for whatever reason. Now, this was not included in there, but PT was one of those games that could work on the PlayStation 5. And then they took away the way to access it. Now, before the PlayStation 5 came out, of course, there were people who were reviewing it, who were getting their review units, who were checking it out. And I believe it was Kotaku. I know there's a lot of reason to dislike Kotaku, but just hear me out here. I believe it was Kotaku they were actually able to transfer their copy of PT from the PlayStation 4 to the PlayStation 5 before the PS5 was released. Keep that in mind. Before it was released, they were able to do that. And this is not a dev kit. It's not a test kit. It's definitely not modified. This was retail hardware, retail PS4 to retail PS5. They were able to transfer their data over. They had PT installed on the PlayStation 5, and they were able to fire it up and play it. Shortly after that was announced, Sony ended up making a change and ended up blacklisting PT on the PS5. So even if you had the game installed on there, you could not play it. And this journalist ended up verifying that. They tried to play it on the same PS5, the same install that worked, and PT would no longer boot up. And then they ended up reaching out to Sony about it. And I believe what Sony said, they wouldn't say the quiet part out loud, but they were very corporate in their speaking. They said something along the lines of, we did not make the judgment on that. We leave the playability of content like that to the publishers. And if a publisher does not want their content to be played on the PlayStation 5, they can request that it be blocked. And in this case, it was a case of the publisher asking for this to be blocked. So therefore, we honored their request. So I'll say the quiet part out loud. Konami saw that, had an issue with it, and said, we don't want this playable teaser playable on the PlayStation 5. And they killed it just like that. And the sad thing is, that happened before the PS5 officially released. So even if you went out there and you got a PS5 on day 0, and you ended up hooking it up and everything, and you immediately did your transfer over, I mean, well, you couldn't because you have to, you have to connect to PSN, you have to do all that. But what I'm saying is people didn't even have a chance. If you're one of those people, you got it on day 0 or day 1, you didn't even have a chance to load up your copy of PT on there. You can do it now because you can jailbreak the PlayStation 5 and you can break that block list that was on there, but this stuff has been demonstrated. We've seen it. We've seen it many times. We saw it on the PS5 before the PS5 was even officially announced. It can just be taken away just like that. And keep in mind, there is no technical reason for PT not being playable on the PS5. It is playable. We've seen proof of it. I know Lance McDonald, I want to say, he ended up finding a way to kind of finagle and finesse it and get it working on one of his systems. So he was able to get it to work. These days now, it's a lot easier to do because you can just jailbreak the system and then you can play it that way. But we shouldn't have to do stuff like that. And the game is still playable on PS4. If you have a PS4 with PT installed and you have the entitlement and everything on there, you're still able to play it. Konami just wanted to block it on PS5 because they just want to memory hole it as much as they can, which is so depressing because, again, it is one of the best gaming experiences and one of the best gaming applications in general, just games, piece of software that I have ever been able to experience or play. It's incredible, especially for somebody like me where I was there for the mystery of it at the beginning. I told you all, I got that phone call from my friend who he was the one who introduced me to it. I had no idea what a PT was. Yeah. So this is still going on. This stuff is going on. We've seen too, and it's just, sorry, I keep having just like little pauses here because I'm like, it's sad, it's disappointing, there's disbelief there. And I know we can say that the enemy here is DRM technically, because even if you, let's say, you have your disk drive, like you have your disk drive working, you have your discs and all that stuff, it's not going to be like something like a CD, where a CD, I mean, you can rip them, anybody can rip a CD really easily. DVDs, yes, they do have, the CSS on there, but we've been able to decrypt that for so long, that's child's play at this point. But with games, you can't really back, as you all know, and I have a whole channel about it, you can't really back them up as easily. So even if you have the stuff, it doesn't really show, the true ownership of it there. You really have to modify your system and be able to back up the game in order to have a true sense of ownership and do what you can and do what you want to with that game. But still having that disc available and not relying on a single point, a single entity, a single company, a single service is really nice. And we've been, and Man, it's so depressing, but I'm so happy about it at the same time. We've been seeing so many examples of this get blasted into the stratosphere. First of all, we have seen multiple cases now this past month of Microsoft accounts being suspended. And not just them being suspended, because I talked about this in my video. I had said, like, look, that's one big reason why I'm not all in on that all digital future. Because I'm from back in the day where people used to get their Xbox Live accounts suspended for seemingly no reason. And I'm not talking about like, oh, they were, taking modified systems online or they were running, Call of Duty modded lobbies or something. It's like, no, people would just get their accounts clipped, hit, suspended, whatever it was. And any content they had on there, they can't access that easily. Again, at least, they get a new system. They can't import that account over. That account's burnt. That account's gone. But we've been seeing multiple instances of people who were getting their Microsoft account suspended because, oh, here's a better part, because they got hacked. And essentially what would happen is the account would get hacked, and then Microsoft would confirm the account was hacked, and then say, hey, in order to stop any further damage of this, we have suspended the account. So now that means that you will not be able to access it again. You cannot appeal it. This is a final decision here. Any content, anything that you've paid for, you cannot access again. You have to make a new account and you have to repurchase it. Anything you have on your OneDrive, you can't access that anymore. So these are people who've been getting old accounts suspended. Meanwhile, it's not like they were breaking the terms of service. They were getting their accounts hacked, and Microsoft's way of helping them out was to suspend that account in order to lessen further damage, but not trying to clean it up or anything. Oh, no. Which is really crazy to think about too, because people's Microsoft accounts are more important than you would expect, especially since these accounts are used for OneDrive backup, for gamer tags, for purchases, for logging into Windows, for logging into their own computers, their tablets, whatever it is. That's what these accounts have evolved to. That's what they're there for. And the reason why I'm saying this is because so many people complain about YouTube, but you know what? Whenever I see YouTube accounts end up getting hacked, they do get suspended. But then the account owner gets in contact with YouTube support, and YouTube support helps them out. And they've honestly gotten pretty good at doing it for big people and small people. Like, I'll give it up to them. But YouTube does not do the thing where they say, oh, well, your account got hacked, so we did suspend it. Now, they do suspend it. They do terminate the channel. They suspend it if it's been hacked. But they don't come back and say, oh, yeah, because it's hacked, sorry, we're not going to unsuspend it here. So any purchases you made on your Google account or YouTube account or whatever it was, you just have to make a new account and you just have to, redo it all. Like, no, not even YouTube. In all their faults, not even they do that. But that's what Microsoft's been doing. There was one person from Brazil, and apparently I just learned recently from all this that Brazil has quite good consumer rights protections. So major props to them. But there was a person there, this happened to them, and they ended up taking it to court, and they won. And apparently Microsoft sent, I don't want to mess up the numbers, so I'm not going to say it, but they sent a surprising amount of lawyers to defend this case. And in the end, Microsoft lost, and they had to restore this guy's account, restore his content, and give him $400, the equivalent of US $400. The other person I'd seen where they had their account of almost 20 years suspended, just in the way that I described, ended up causing an uproar online. And only then, once it ended up getting attention, that's when Microsoft ended up restoring the account. So I just want people who have so much trust in the all digital future. And if you're 40 minutes into this and you're still listening and you're on the channel, first of all, thank you so much. And secondly, you're probably not the person who I'm aiming this towards. But if you are the person I'm aiming this towards, what you should be hearing is two very alarming things. That if this ever happens to you, if your account ever gets phished, hacked, suspended, any of that stuff, the company doesn't have to help you. They could suspend your account and they could just turn around and say, sorry, you got to repurchase everything. Unless you either, one, want to take them to court about it, or two, you're going to cause a major uproar online. That's upsetting. If that doesn't upset you, that should upset you. Man, that's just how it is. we got these networks still going down as well too. I had this stuff written down on July 24th. PlayStation Network went down. I end up taking a little bit of a jab of it online because I'm just going to be honest. I used to debate this. I don't really debate it anymore. I don't have that same energy. I don't have that same time. I don't want to waste it to that. But I used to, debate this with people. It was actually around when the time like the Xbox One was going to be coming out. When I was trying to tell people like, yeah, this all digital stuff is going to suck. It's not going to be good. These networks go down. And people are trying to say, oh no, Xbox Live doesn't go down. No, PlayStation Network goes down way more often. No, PlayStation Network doesn't go down. Oh, I have fast internet. No, my internet never goes down. It's not going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. And I pretty much said, yeah, okay, hey, look, my internet never goes down, but guess what? PlayStation Network does. And you know what else? It wasn't even a PlayStation Network issue. Apparently, it was a AWS, Amazon Web Services outage. And when those happen, you know what happens? A whole lot of other services go with them. I believe, let me see which other ones happened. So when, just to describe this to you, just the branch of it all here, when this ended up going down, I'm talking about PlayStation Network here, there were several other services that also started suffering from this. I'm going to name them off for you, just the ones I have on screen here. Second Life, Cash App, QuickBooks, Magic the Gathering Arena, Our Dream AI, Apple Pay, Elden Ring, Wise, Steam, Notion, Bamboo Lab, Overwatch, EA, Apex Legends, Xfinity from Comcast, and Hulu. So it's really not just limited to one platform anymore. Because so many of these things are wrapped up amongst each other, because these services are relying on other services here, when one thing falls, a whole lot go with it. But, that was the beauty of physical media, and that's also the beauty of, being able to back up and actually own your products, your games, and all that stuff, because I'm going to lift this from Expedition. When one falls, we continue, and that's what we can do. And you know what? With continuing on with these as well, just 3 days later, technically I'm recording this on July 27th, but this started happening on the evening of July 26th, Xbox Live started having issues as well. Xbox Live had the same thing going on. What ended up going down? Account and profile issues, store and subscriptions, games and gaming, apps and mobile. So if you were using the Xbox app, no, you weren't. If you want to purchase something, no, you weren't. If you want to sign in, nope. If you want to play some games, you are probably going to run into issues. These are the things that are like we're seeing them in real time. We see it happen. And by the way, with that outage, the Xbox Live outage actually shocked me. Not that it happened, but for how long it was ongoing. It started happening the evening of the 26th. And I remember on the 27th in the morning, I saw it and, I said something about it. And then it was like even later into the day and even into the evening, like I looked and I would still see people talk about it. I'm like, wait a minute, they haven't fixed that yet? It's still down? It's still down. And some people might say, okay, it's only a day, but I'm like, it's not the fact that it's a day. It's the fact that if you have an all digital system and all digital infrastructure and you are reliant on online to that point, that alone is alarming. If you want to access that, you cannot. You cannot do that. I think this has been going on for a while on here as well too. What I'm talking about, like a while, I'm just talking about what I'm talking about with this topic here. But some of the other stuff I want to say on here is that it's a strange time right now. I said it in my video. I was like, look, I'm going to be real with you all. A lot of these game shops, the video game shops, it's not video games that are propping them up anymore. It's Pokemon cards, it's collectibles. You go to a GameStop, they don't really have the games there as much now. It's the merchandise, it's the pop figures, it's all that stuff. When I went to, actually this happened a couple of times, but when I went to a game shop, I was thinking at one point, I was trading in a few games, I was buying some other games, and it was taking a while because between my trade-in, they had to help out a few other people because like half the store was video games, the other half was dedicated to like cards and collectibles. And back to back, they had 3 $250 transactions for Pokemon cards. So video games aren't keeping these things afloat. They're not pushing that much volume with just only a game store. It's rare that you see an exclusive video game, like exclusively for video games, game store that only specializes in that, that still continues to be successful and thrive the way they do. Even the best ones have just been starting to throw in a lot of, memorabilia, collectibles, things like that, which I don't even hate that. You got to do what you got to do. The thing I do hate, though, is that apparently GameStop straight up said that physical game sales are irrelevant. And with that, I was like, GameStop, you can shut up, but at the same time, it's like, I'm not surprised when I go into those stores, like the times I do, and it's barely games and it's mostly collectibles at this point. The sad thing with all this too, is I'll actually lift this from one of my friends, because one of my friends, we were talking about this in depth at one point, and he was saying that it's not just it's not just having the game on a disc and having it on a shelf. It's that these services, which this is what I've been preaching, these services are going to go down. I actually have 2 stories to tell about this. Well, this is the first one here, but he was kind of saying in his, theoretical thing, like, let's say the year is, right now it's 2026. Let's say in 2047, somebody wants to revisit the PlayStation 5. So they go out, they get a PS5, and they have to get, they get a PS5 Pro, let's say, and they have to go and they have to pick up a separate disk drive. And there's a very real chance that they're going to put that disk drive in the PS5, fire it up, and then they have to register the disk drive to that PlayStation 5. But what do you do if the authentication servers have gone offline or they're not reachable? I know that we're on this channel and we can certainly say, yeah, we can modify the system, but that shouldn't be the only option. I'm glad that's an option, but that should not be the only option. And to put it with that too, I ran into an issue exactly like that, actually. Not with video games, with Apple, which, dare I say, let me look this up actually, just so I make sure I'm not talking out of my butt here. I'm actually going to be talking about Apple here, and I just wanted to compare this. And if my quick look up here is, I'm just going to trust it here. Apparently, Sony's worth is about $122 billion, which is nothing to sneeze at. Apple's is $4.8 trillion. So I'm going to be talking about a much bigger and much more valuable company than Sony. This is beyond video games at this point. Now, I really haven't talked about this. I guess I'm just going to be kind of sharing it here for the first time, because I've stayed pretty quiet about it, but it's something that I'm happy to do. Sometimes during my, whenever this is available and whenever my schedule does allow for it, there's a repair initiative and a collective that I'm a part of. And what we do is we participate in a few volunteer efforts in which we'll set up at a place. It'll be open for several hours. And whether you want to get a bike fixed up, clothing worked on, lamps repaired, general electronics, or computers, hey, that's me. I'm usually in the computer section there. We take a look at people's stuff and we try our best to fix it up, or resolve it, or help diagnose issues, or help steer people towards the right direction. We do it for free, and it's something that we're passionate about, we love to do. I participated in it several times this year, and I take a lot of joy in participating in that. And the last one I worked on, there was not one, but there was 2 people who brought in older MacBook Airs. And these were about 2011, 2012, 2013 MacBook Airs, something like that. But there was one person who, she brought in a MacBook Air. She had factory reset it at home. So, she wiped it. She, had to reinstall the operating system on there. But one thing I really liked about Apple, I remember, was when I was, working on these devices, was that it was really cool that you could boot up into a recovery mode, connect online, and you could just download the latest update that way. I always thought that was awesome. You could just download the latest operating system and reinstall it fresh from there. I thought that was a really cool feature, and I still think it is. The problem is, I was working on someone's MacBook, and let's say it was from maybe 2012 or so, something like that, 2012, 2013. It was a very early MacBook Air. It still worked, but they just need to reinstall the operating system. And when they tried to do it, they got stuck. They weren't able to continue on. So I had to boot up into a slightly different recovery mode on there. And then from there, I had to get online. It had to authenticate to Apple's servers. And then I was able to actually try to get the latest update. The problem was I couldn't. And I couldn't do it because apparently the SSL certificates were too outdated on there. So what you have to do is you have to bring your own installation media, which I didn't have the time for that. And I didn't have the availability for that there, unfortunately, because it was kind of near the end of this volunteer effort. Or what you could do, which I tried this a couple times and it just was not working for me. I feel like I could have gotten it if I just had more time, but as how it does sometimes, that's what happened here. I just wasn't able to make time for it, unfortunately, because we just didn't have the time there. But the other option is that you could essentially force it to connect to the non-secure version of Apple servers and connect there and then download the update. But what I'm saying is that is a perfectly workable computer. It's someone who doesn't need the latest and greatest. They just need something that gets them online, checks email, maybe they can watch a few YouTube videos. They don't need it to work well, they just need it to work. And this is from Apple, one of the biggest companies out there, completely eclipsing Sony by so much there. And we're running into that issue right there. Like a standard person, because that's why they were bringing it to me, because they didn't know what to do. A standard person was able to reset, they were able to factory reset their MacBook, but they couldn't actually install the latest update on there that they were entitled to because those SSL certificates were down. And this is something that I feel like also Apple, with as big as they are, with all that money and stuff, they could resolve that. We shouldn't have to do the bypasses. They could resolve that there, but they haven't, and they're probably not going to. And that is much more useful, by the way. A MacBook Air, even an old one, it is going to be much more useful than a game system here. So we're talking about a much better tool in that regard. But what I'm saying is this is how it is. This stuff is happening. So for people who might be thinking, oh, like people like me are, spouting doom and gloom and trying to spread all this fear and uncertainty and doubt. No. We're just telling y'all what's been going on. We're telling you all what's going to happen. And we have plenty of experiences and examples to back it up. So I think I can't really speak for other people, but I can at least speak for myself. I'll say I've been done for a while. I'm done trying to convince people. I just share and I just show and I just tell. And if you want to connect the dots, that's on you. But I no longer spend, and it's been like this for many years, I no longer spend the effort trying to convince people. I'm like, you know what? If that's what you want to do, you do you. That's one of my favorite things to say. You do you. You do you. And if or when it comes to bite you, and it will at one point, like, I'm sorry, I told you so. Like, I talked to you about this 2 years ago, 4 years ago, whatever it was, and it happened. So I wasn't even a soothsayer in it. I'm just explaining what's happened from history, because history repeats itself. Oh yeah, and if you didn't hate this enough, if you're one of those people who really dislike Sony, discontinuing PlayStation discs, partially we could also say that we've lost this to AI as well. So if this whole AI conundrum has annoyed you, it hasn't annoyed you enough, because they have been repurposing their disc pressing facility for micro lenses. And from what I know, just from a little bit of a description right here, funny enough and ironically enough, this is an AI overview of it. Optical microlenses are becoming critical in AI data centers to overcome bandwidth bottlenecks and power constraints. So that is what Sony is trying to repurpose all this into, because also, let's be clear here. Let's be very clear. There's going to be a lot more money in these data centers than there is with these physical game discs that they're pressing. And I'm sorry, I think I said that was the last thing, but I have one last thing to say. Just one last thing to say. Because I should have said this earlier, but I just forgot to on here. I saw Metal Jesus Rocks did a video giving his opinion on it, like many other YouTubers did, and he said something that I thought was quite good about this. He was kind of trying to appeal to Sony, and he actually got a little surprisingly emotional too, which I get it, man, I get it. But he was talking about physical media, and he said that, for example, vinyl is not it is mainstream now, but vinyl is very much a niche thing. Vinyl is expensive. But there's people who come out and they support vinyl and they love it and they do pay those prices. And it's not cheap to manufacture vinyl. And it is expensive for what it is. But if it's an issue with the costs of it, why not just raise the price on the physical discs? I mean, yeah, people would be upset by that. But the people who truly want to support physical will at least have the option to still purchase physical games. So if it's a cost measure like that, like these physical discs are too expensive to produce, raise the price of it. That's what they did with vinyl. People still buy vinyl. And the vinyl that is not interesting enough or too expensive or both doesn't get sold. But even the stuff that is expensive, if people want it, they do pay for it. It sells. So I think there's that there. Now, man, I thought I was going to get some other topics on here, But I guess it was really just those two tops. I'm happy I brought up the guy who was looking for his friend's place in the neighborhood here. I'm happy I brought that up at the beginning because, man, I don't know if I would have brought up at the end here. But at the end here, I do want to bring up a couple of other things that will hopefully put us in some better spirits here. I guess we can say that. So one of them is a game store story. And for those who do not know, these are stories I like to tell typically kind of at the end of these episodes here, in which I talk about my times when I was working at a video game shop. I worked there during really the peak of the 7th generation for about 2 or 2.5 years during high school. It was a job I enjoyed, but it was also a job I didn't like at the same time. I'm not like sitting here complaining, but look, it's a retail job, you know? I loved the I loved the job itself. I loved my coworkers, but the general public and just the retailness of it definitely got on my nerves. I can say that. Before this here, this is kind of going to be a little bit video game store adjacent. I guess I can say that. It's for some games that I ended up fixing up. Now, I always knew about, not always, I should say, okay. I knew about resurfacing discs when I was very young. I used to go to video game shops when I was like 8 or 9 years old, and I saw how they would fix up game discs, and I thought it was the coolest thing, and I was the one who was telling people for the first time about resurfacing discs. There's people who they thought when a disc gets too scratched, that's it. You just can't listen to it, you can't play it, you throw it away. I was the one telling people, no, you can go to the shop, you can pay them $2 or $3, they can fix up the game for you, and it works. Some shops do it better than other shops. I'm going to be honest, there's some shops where I've seen people take scratch games over there, and they bring them back, and it looks even worse. So it can depend on the device you're using, but also certainly the technique. So when I started working at a game store, I started using not just one, but multiple resurfacing machines. And I got quite good at fixing up discs. It was something that I was passionate about, and it just came easy to me. And it's honestly not too difficult. I even have a disc resurfacer in my house. I have one. Like I that was one of the things I bought several years ago, and I still use it on a regular basis. I just used it last week on a couple of discs. So what happened was, before I had my own, clearly, because like I was in high school at the time, I ended up just using the one at work. Now I used it for all the discs that were coming through. So Blu-rays, games, DVDs, CDs, all that stuff. We were able to use it on everything. We were able to rejuvenate and restore and repair so many discs that had, probably not gonna they probably weren't gonna see the light of day again. The only discs that we really couldn't fix up were cracked discs, or if the disc itself had a defect, or if the disc had a gouge out of it. Oh, and surface scratches too. Your surface scratches, you're done at that point. Just it's done. So there's that. And by surface scratch, I mean like scratches on the top of the label that like go through the disc itself, so the data is gone. Like that data is just gone. It's physically, the data is gone. It's not that it's unreadable, it's that it's gone, is what I'm saying. I'm really stressing that. So a big part of it was also, it was nice because, I would also collect a few things and stuff, and I would be able to fix up my own games. I would just, bring my games with me. Between fixing up other games, I would fix my own. It's not like it was even a secretive thing. I just did it anyways, and like nobody really cared, because it's like, oh, I'm fixing up 4 of my own discs, and I just fixed up 100 discs for the store. Like, nobody's going to care about that. And we all did it. We all brought in our own discs and fixed them up at times, so it was fine. But what happened was, of course, my friends knew about this, so I offered to fix up games and discs and all that for friends. I did it for family members as well, too, and even family friends. So this ended up kind of spiraling out between like 3 or 4 people. So first of all, one of my good friends, this is during I want to say my senior year of high school. One of my good friends, I don't even remember what game it was, but she had a game that she told me she couldn't play anymore because it was scratched up. And I told her, I was like, I could fix that. And she asked how much I wanted for it. And I was like, dude, I'm not going to charge you. Like, we charge like $3 a disc at the store, but I'm able to do it for free. If you're cool with me borrowing it, I'll just borrow it. And the next time I work, I'll take it there and then I'll bring it back and I'll give it to you. So that's what she did. I for the love of God, I can't remember what game it was, but she gave me this game. My next shift, I took it over. I fixed it up, made it look brand new, gave it back to her. And I remember she looked at it and was shocked. Like shocked because it looked brand new. And now one of our mutual friends is over on the side. And this is a dude, I have nothing against him, but him and I, whenever we talked, we got along. We would have been cool friends and all that, but we never just like we never got to like that really like hang out friendship level. You know what I mean? And I can't really describe why we never got to that point. I don't know. Um, if I go back in time, I probably should have talked to him a little more and pushed that friendship a bit more because he was a cool dude. But sometimes that happens. So, anyways, he's sitting on the side, and he was like, "Hey, wait, do you got to Hey, you got a resurfacer?" And I was like, "Wait, what?" And he's like, "Do you got a resurfacer?" And I was like, me, no, but like I have one at work." And he's like, "Hey, dude, you want to help me out?" And I was like, "Oh, do you have something?" He's like, I mean, would you want to help me out? Like, I'm not pushing, but," and I was like, "Yeah, do you have like a game or two that you want to get fixed up?" And he said, "Yeah." And I said, "Okay, just, I mean, like, if you're cool, same thing, if you're cool with me borrowing them, just bring them over. I'm not going to do a ton of them." He's like, "Oh, no, I only have like one or two games." And I was like, "Okay, yeah, just, next time, just go home, bring the discs. If you're cool with me borrowing them, it's going to be a bit, but next shift I can fix them up and I'll bring them back." And he was like, "Okay, cool." So I think it was the next day. They were some PS2 games. Now, I do remember this. I remember I laughed a little bit, like in my head, I laughed, and I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to call it out, but I'll call it out here. I told him like one or two games, right? Because my thing was, I'm like, look, if it's like one or two games, it's fine. If you're bringing me a stack, you got to pay for it. Because I mean, that's the company I'm working for. Like one or two is okay. And most friends did that. They'd give me one or two discs. Now he came over. I believe he gave me two PS2 games. I remember one of them was Jack 3. But I remember when I opened it up, one of the games had another disc in there. So I was like, okay, no, he pushed it. I told him one or two, he put three in there, but whatever. I'm not gonna complain. It's all good. So I told him, hey, just next shift I'll work on them and then I'll bring them back. And he said it's all good. And I knew it wasn't an accident because all three of the discs were heavily scratched. So I remember my next shift, I brought his games with me. I fixed them up. They looked terrible at the beginning. By the end, they looked pretty dang good. There was like one or two scratches I remember I couldn't really fully get out, but I looked at it and I was like, well, first of all, he's not paying anything for this, and secondly, it's good enough. Like it's pretty good. He'll be fine. So I put them back in the cases. I gave them back to him. Next time I saw him in class, he thanked me. And then I think it was a few days later, I asked him about it, or I think it was actually the next day I asked how it was, and he was like, "Oh, dude, thank you so much. Jack 3 plays like a dream." I was like, "Wait, really?" He's like, "Dude, it plays like it's brand new. Like, I can actually play. It's not freezing. It's not skipping. Like, it just plays like a dream. It's so smooth. Thank you." I was like, "Oh, you're welcome." And I believe it was the next day. I believe it was the next day he did tell me that. And then it was funny because then I end up coming home and I've neglected to give this detail here, but now it will start to unfold. So I was at home, and I remember like I was in like the living room or something. I don't even remember what I was doing. And my mom comes home from work. Now, one thing is that she ended up working with this classmate's mom, and she was good friends with him. And she kind of comes to me like really sweet and all that. And it was almost like, I know what it was. She thought that she was going to be overstepping a boundary, but I was like, dude, it's fine. It's all good. So she's like, "Hey, so I was speaking to, let me give him a name. Let's say Josh. How about that?" She was like, "Hey, so I was speaking to Josh's mom and you fixed some games for him." Now, I don't know if you all have this problem, but the problem is sometimes when parents talk to you, it's like you did something good and you did something good, but the way they're approaching you about it, it sounds like you did something really bad. So that was like immediately what flagged off in my head. I was like, yeah, I borrowed some games. Yeah, he wanted some games fixed up. And like, is there anything wrong? She's like, "Oh, no, it's fine. It's just he brought the games to you and you took them to your workplace and you fixed them, right?" And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Okay. So the problem is, my coworker, because that's his mom." I said, "Yeah." She's like, "Yeah, so he has a little brother, and the little one saw that his brother's games got fixed, and I guess he found out about it, and he also wants his games fixed too. And I was like, oh, okay, like that's it. And she said, yeah, is that okay? And I was like, yeah, no, that's fine. It's going to be the same thing. I just need to borrow the disc. She's like, actually, I have it. She pulls it out of her bag, and I believe it was the game. I believe it was Cat in the Hat on PlayStation 2. I believe that's what it was. But she already had the game with her, and I started laughing, and she's like, no, okay, look, you know, this is what happened. I was talking with my coworker, so the guy's mom, Josh's mom here, and she's like, look, I was talking to Josh's mom, and yeah, like I said, the problem was that, and you did good. There was no problem, but, you fixed up those games for Josh, and now the little one wants his games fixed up, and then his mom brought it to ask me, but she wasn't sure if you could do it because you already did those games for Josh. And I was like, oh no, I can do that one. That's fine. And she's like, well, wait, are you sure? I just don't. And I was like, look, no, it's fine. I fix up. And it was pretty much the same thing I said at the beginning of the story. I said, look, I fix up so many discs, they're not even going to notice that I'm fixing. What, he wants like one game fixed up? Yeah, they're not even going to notice. It's fine. And then she even offered, she's like, well, okay, is it going to cost anything? I was like, no, we're not going to charge anything. It's okay. The only downside is that it's going to be a while until I work another shift. So I'm going to have to hold on to this game. I'm not keeping it, but I have to hold on to it. Next time I have a shift, I'll take it into work. I'll get it fixed up, and then I'll bring it back and I'll give it to you. And she's like, okay, thank you. No, that's all good. I just wanted to make sure, like, there would be no issue, like this wasn't getting you in trouble. And I was like, no, dude, it's one disc, it's fine, don't worry about it. So then rinse and repeat, quite literally the same thing happened. My next shift, I brought in Cat in the Hat. In between fixing up all these other games, I fixed up his game, put it back in the case. Later on, I end up giving it, as opposed to going through Josh, I end up giving it back to my mom. She brought it back to work, she gave it to her coworker, and I know the kid was very happy about that. So that's the stuff I like to. I like to be able to use my powers and my expertise to help with stuff like that. It was always fun doing that there. And also just the feeling of being able to fix up a game like that, like have it be all scratched and scuffed and ugly looking and barely playable, and then look like something that's brand new. I'll tell you, man, you never get tired of that feeling. You never get tired of seeing that crisp, clean reflection, that scratch-free reflection on the bottom of the disc. You never get tired of that. Now, the last thing I'm going to be covering here is going to be the games I've been playing. And really, because I kind of want to get y'all out of here. It's been just over an hour. Thank you for sticking with me here. I'm really only going to talk about the only game that I finished up this month, which has been Deltarune Chapter 5. Now, as opposed to, I didn't even know. Actually, shout out to one of my friends on here, Sky HDD. I guess technically not really on YouTube, but she's been more known in like the original Xbox scene. She was the one who actually told me about this. I honestly didn't even know that Chapter 5 of Deltarune was going to be coming out so soon until she suddenly messaged me and she's like, hey, Chapter 5 is coming out. Chapter 5 is coming out. I was like, wait, what? Already? Because for anyone who doesn't follow the game, Deltarune's been releasing, and it released in chapters, but I believe the first one came out in 2018. And between chapters 2 and then 3 and 4, because they did chapter 1 and then chapter 2, and then chapters 3 and 4 were released together. But the wait between chapters 2 and then 3 plus 4 were so long. It was many years. But I believe Toby Fox, not Tony, but Toby Fox, I believe he said like, hey, we're not going to have as long of wait times on there. So chapter 5 just kind of dropped for me. I didn't know it was going to drop until like 2 days before it did. So it was really cool being able to, kind of get that surprise on there. Now, usually when I play through Deltarune, like whenever a new chapter comes out, I like to play through all the previous chapters before playing the new one. The thing is, I did that with chapter 1, I did that with chapter 2, and then chapter 3 and 4, I did that. And I remember how long 3 and 4 was, and I was like, I just played them like last year. They're still pretty fresh in my memory, so I'm just going to watch some like synopsis of them. And I got the job pretty well. Like I was able to be like, I remember enough details from here. I get it. I will say, if I had the time and the wherewithal, it would have been better if I just did a full replay of all of them, because there were a few details that I did forget about. So some of the pieces weren't fully fitting. But overall, I was still able to enjoy Chapter 5. And I'll say, man, Without spoiling it really, I guess you can just skip past this if you don't want any spoilers at all, but trying to keep the spoilers minimum, it's probably one of my favorite chapters, if not my favorite chapter so far of Deltarune. I absolutely loved it. I enjoyed it. The technical aspects of it I loved as well too. Deltarune to me kind of feels like a game where it's like there's somebody who is it feels like you're playing, to me at least, it feels like you're playing someone's first video game they've ever made, except they're actually like pretty good at making video games even for their first time around, and they seem to be able to, like, they have a knack for it. That's how I feel like it is with Toby Fox. So it was great, it was fun, it was, man, there was at one point one of the story points there that I just freaked out about was they made it so tense. There was so much work up to it, and it ended up closing a loop. There was one, story, like side story in this chapter that they end up putting a nice happy bow on, which I was not expecting it to end the way it did. I wasn't expecting it to happen. I kind of forgot about this side story, and I'm like, man, I love continuity like that. I love that so much. I love the type of shows, like, for example, there's this show Atlanta. I love the type of shows where in like season 1, episode 3, they will make a reference to something, and it's just a random reference that's there, and it doesn't get answered. You have no idea. You will forget about that. It's just a funny thing, but it does not become relevant until like season 4, episode 6, where there's like a 10-minute side story about this one line that was just a throwaway line from the first season. That's the type of continuity that I love. That's the type of detail that I love, and it definitely delivered. There was also one reveal in there that I will say was one of the best moments in gaming for me I had played through. I'm not going to lie to you all. It's not like the best, but it was one of the best because my jaw was just on the floor when one of these reveals happened. And I just freaked out with it. Now, I will share something because, this one of the ways my brothers and I, we really bond over Deltarune and Undertale because they were interested in these games, I think, before I learned about them. But then by the time they were trying to bring it to me, I already owned Undertale. I'd already played through Undertale. So they thought I was like the coolest older brother there because on top of it, I was also giving them access to Undertale. They were able to play it because of me. And now, I mean, they've succeeded me in it. They burned through Deltarune. They love all the theories, the hidden messages, the hidden stuff, all of that. They love looking into all of that there. They love all the hidden lore. The thing is, I don't know anything about that. I don't look it up. I don't try to entertain myself with it. I don't read further into it. Like, I have my own theories, but I kind of keep it to myself. I'm completely removed from the fandom, by the way. I don't really rep Undertale that hard. I don't really rep Deltarune that hard. It's not because of like an embarrassment of it. It's a thing that I enjoy. And that's it. I like the games. I think they're well made. I think they're funny. I think they're great. I really enjoy them. But I'm not, in the fandom like that. And I say all this because my brothers, when I was telling about it, because I end up beating chapter 5 like way later than them. But when I told them about my experiences, one of them said something along the lines of, they find my perspective so interesting because I don't know about any of those theories. I don't know about any of the hidden lore in the background. And because of that, from me, they get to see such a rare experience through Undertale and Deltarune. Because they have all of these theories, all of this backlog, all of this history, all of these references. And I'm just going through them on my own experience, completely unaltered, like really unaffected by other people. I don't have people saying, you should do this, you should do that, you should try this out, you should do this here. Like, no, I'm really just sticking to it on my own for the most part. But then they're also impressed because they see it's like, even without me having that understanding and that knowledge, I'm enjoying the game so much. And it's just a perspective that they don't get to see. They actually think it's an incredible rarity that I have this perspective because most people don't have it. And for me, I'm just like, look, I like the games. I like the story. I like the humor. It just clicks with me. I really enjoy it. So I've still been enjoying the Deltarune games. I'm looking forward to whenever Chapter 6 drops. Man, Chapter 5 was quite good. So either way, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. It was a little bit of a longer one, and my apologies for that. I wanted to get it under an hour, but I had a little more to say than I expected there. So, if you haven't made it to the end of one of these episodes, first of all, thank you for making it out to the end. I really appreciate you listening, hanging out, watching, whatever you're doing, whatever it might be. And typically what I like to do is I like to pick a keyword or a key phrase. And if you use this keyword or key phrase in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Now, typically, I kind of look around, I pick something off of my desk here. And you know what? How about this? I have this little sign here. It has some tape on it. We're going to use that. How about sign? Let's say that. How about sign? Do you know sign language? Have you always wanted to learn sign language? Do you have any particular signs that you appreciate? Are you into astrology signs? I'm personally not. I think it kind of annoys me in all honesty, but that's the thing there. Did you know that if you are annoyed by solicitors, depending on your jurisdiction, there's actually no soliciting signs that you can get for free, like through your local city hall or something, and you can actually put them on your door or whatever it is. So therefore, if somebody is trying to solicit to you and you have a no soliciting sign, you can get them in some trouble if you really want to go through all that. So they shouldn't be doing that. Like, the thing is, it's one of those things, and you can't just, by the way, real quick, a little pro tip, if you live in a place like that, you can't just get a general no soliciting sign. It has to be like a no soliciting sign that ends up having like an actual bylaw or like a law or something or a reference to it that pretty much points that, so you can look it up and be like, oh, this law right here in this jurisdiction says you cannot solicit here if this sign is available, or this soliciting is illegal, or whatever it is. But I've talked a lot about signs right there. Crop circles are signs as well too, technically. So if you have a sign that you want to give out, if you want to talk about a sign that you've seen, if you want to talk about a sign that's made you laugh, maybe even one that made you cry, let's use that word, sign. If you use that word in a comment on the video upload, I'll know that you made it to the end of this episode. Either way, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you all got to be entertained, maybe even rage a little bit, facepalm a little bit. Just let me know how it was overall. Give me your sign. Either way, that is about it for this episode of Mario's Minute. I gotta wrap this thing up now. This is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this episode, a like would absolutely be appreciated, and if you didn't like it, a dislike is fine as well, too. But as I always say, this is Mr. Mario, signing off. Thank you all for listening and watching, and until next month.